He hit me with the carving fork because I wouldn't set the table fast enough. Mom said, "Family first," so I bled in silence. What they didn't know, Grandma had seen everything, and she wasn't about to let it go. That Thanksgiving changed everything. The bruises would fade, but the paper trail I'd been building for years wouldn't. Neither would the $217,000 secret buried in my father's trust fund that Mom thought I'd never discover. My name is Rachel, and I've been keeping secrets in spreadsheets since I was 18 years old. At 29, I work in internal audit for a financial services firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. My colleagues think I'm meticulous because I love numbers. They're wrong. I'm meticulous because I learned early that documentation is the only protection you have when the people who should protect you won't. I lost my father when I was 8, brain aneurysm quick, merciful for him, devastating for me. Mom remarried 2 years later to Frank, a former Marine who wore his veteran status like armor against any criticism. He moved into our house with his pickup truck, his temper, and his conviction that discipline meant dominance. Frank never laid a hand on me when I was a child. He was smarter than that. He waited until I was old enough that bruises could be explained away as clumsiness, old enough that my word would be questioned, old enough that leaving would be seen as betrayal rather than escape. I moved out at 18, the day after high school graduation, got a job at a bank, worked my way through community college, then state university, built a life in Charlotte, 90 minutes from the house in Mount Fairview where my childhood ended. But every holiday, I went back. Family first, Mom would say, and I'd pack my overnight bag like I was preparing for deployment. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be different. I'd promised myself set boundaries, stay in a hotel, limit contact to the meal itself. But when I arrived at 2 in the afternoon, Frank was already 3 beers deep, and Mom was stress cooking enough food for 20 people when there would only be 6 of us. "Finally," Mom said when I walked in, not looking up from the green beans she was trimming. "Set the table, the good china." I'd driven 90 minutes, hadn't seen her in 3 months. No hello, no hug, just orders. The dining room smelled like lemon pledge and Frank's cigarettes. I pulled the china from the cabinet my grandmother's wedding set. Delicate roses painted on cream porcelain, Dad's mother's china, now trapped in this house like everything else he'd left behind. "Use the cloth napkins," Mom called. "And make sure you—" "I know how to set a table," I said, louder than I intended. Frank appeared in the doorway, beer in hand. "Don't take that tone with your mother." I focused on the forks, laying them precisely 1 inch from the plate edge. I wasn't taking a tone. You were being disrespectful." He stepped closer. I could smell the beer, the cigarettes, the Old Spice he'd probably worn since 1985. "Your problem, Rachel, is you think that fancy job makes you better than us? I don't think that." "Then why'd you show up in that suit, trying to make a statement?" I looked down at my clothes. Black slacks, a burgundy blouse, business casual, what I wore to work every day. "It's not a suit." "Don't get smart with me." "Frank, please," Mom said from the kitchen. "Not today." She needs to learn respect. Diane always has. My hands shook as I folded the napkins. Triangle, then half again. The way Mom had taught me, the way her mother had taught her. Traditions passed down through women who learned to make everything look perfect on the surface. "Where's the wine?" Frank asked. "Rachel, get me the wine from the basement." "I'm setting the table." "I didn't ask what you were doing. I told you to get the wine." I set down the napkin I was folding, counted to 5 in my head. "I'll get it when I'm finished here." The carving fork happened so fast I didn't see it coming. One moment Frank was by the door, the next he was beside me, the fork in his hand, not stabbing, but pressing, the tines leaving 4 perfect indentations in my forearm before breaking the skin. "When I tell you to do something," he said, voice low and controlled, like this was a reasonable conversation, "you do it." I jerked away, knocking over a water glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, and Mom rushed in. "What happened?" She saw the glass first, then my arm, Then Frank still holding the fork. Her face went through a series of calculations I knew by heart. "Oh, Rachel, you're bleeding. Frank, get her a towel." "She needs to clean up that glass first," Frank said. "Can't have people stepping on it." "I'll get it," Mom said quickly. "Rachel, go to the bathroom. Clean that up. It's not deep." I looked at her. Really looked at her. 53 years old. 15 pounds thinner than last year. Gray roots showing because Frank said hair dye was a waste of money. He stabbed me with a fork. "Mom, don't be dramatic. It was an accident." "An accident." "We're all stressed. It's a holiday. Just please, Rachel, not today." "Not today," I repeated. When is a good day to talk about Frank attacking me with kitchen utensils?" Frank stepped forward. Mom put a hand on his chest. "She's upset," she told him. "You know how she gets. Rachel, go clean up. We'll forget this happened. Family first. Remember." Family first. The motto that had kept me coming back for 11 years. The phrase that meant Frank's comfort mattered more than my safety. The lie that said blood was thicker than water, even when that blood was dripping on my grandmother's china. I went to the bathroom, ran cold water over the puncture wounds. 4 neat holes, already bruising purple around the edges. I took out my phone and photographed them. Added the images to a folder labeled Evidence that already contained dozens of similar pictures. Bruises from walking into doors, cuts from being clumsy, a pattern of accidents that weren't accidents, documented with the same precision I used to track financial irregularities at work. When I came back, Mom had cleaned up the glass and Frank had disappeared to the garage. The table was half set, abandoned. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway, wringing a dish towel. "Finish the table," she said quietly. "Then we'll have a nice dinner, like a normal family." I looked at the carving fork, still lying where Frank had dropped it. There was a tiny spot of blood on one tine. "Normal families don't stab each other, Mom." "Please, Rachel, just please. Your brother will be here soon with his girlfriend. Let's not ruin Thanksgiving." My brother, her son with Frank, the child who'd never been asked to fetch wine or been corrected with cutlery, the one who got college paid for while I worked 3 jobs, the golden boy who called Frank Dad and meant it. I finished setting the table, put the carving fork at Frank's place setting, smiled when my brother arrived, made small talk with his girlfriend, passed dishes, gave thanks when prompted, bled quietly through the bandage I'd fashioned from paper towels and medical tape. But for the first time in 11 years, I wasn't really there. I was already planning, already deciding, already done. The bruises you don't post on social media are the ones that change you. The secrets you keep to preserve family peace are the ones that eventually demand payment. I'd been paying for years with my silence, my compliance, my returned presence at every holiday like a trained dog. But dogs bite when cornered long enough. And I was done being cornered. I left early the next morning, while Frank was still passed out and Mom was at her Black Friday shift at the department store. The 4 puncture wounds on my arm had darkened overnight, turning purple-black like rotten fruit. I photographed them again in better light, then drove back to Charlotte wearing long sleeves despite the unseasonably warm November day. My apartment felt like a sanctuary, clean, quiet, mine. I made coffee and opened my laptop, pulling up the spreadsheet I'd maintained for 11 years, every dollar they'd taken, every request disguised as family obligation, every guilt trip that ended with my bank account lighter and their problems temporarily solved. The first entry was from my 19th birthday. Mom had called crying Frank had gotten laid off. They might lose the house. Could I help? Just this once? $500? I'd been making $8.50 an hour at the bank, living on ramen and hope, but family first, right. The entries multiplied from there. New roof, $3,000. Frank's truck repairs, $1,800. Mom's dental work because Frank's veteran benefits somehow didn't cover dependents, $2,400. My brother Tyler's basketball camp, travel team fees, equipment, another $3,000 over 2 years, always emergencies, always promises to pay me back that evaporated like morning mist. The total at the bottom of the spreadsheet made my stomach turn 47,832. That didn't include the college fund. I'd started saving the day I got my first real job after graduation. Automatic transfers, $500 a month, into a high-yield savings account. The plan was simple: save for 5 years, then use it for an MBA, move up, move on, move away. But 3 years in, Mom found out about it during one of her fishing expeditions disguised as motherly concern. "Must be nice," she'd said, "having all that money saved when your family's struggling." The guilt worked, like it always did. I'd given them $15,000 for Frank's emergency back surgery, except I later found out the surgery cost $8,000 and insurance covered most of it. Where the rest went, I never knew. Probably the same place all the other money went into Frank's truck, his beer, his betting on football games he insisted weren't really gambling. My phone buzzed. Text from Mom. "Hope you made it home safe. Sorry about yesterday. Frank feels bad." I almost laughed. Frank had never felt bad about anything in his life. Remorse required self-awareness, and Frank's self-awareness extended exactly as far as his own comfort. Another text. "Tyler's graduation is coming up in May. We'll need help with the party." There it was, the ask, not even 24 hours after her husband had drawn blood, and she was already setting up the next withdrawal from the bank of Rachel. I typed back no. 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "What do you mean no?" "I mean no. I won't be helping with Tyler's graduation party, or anything else." My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. On the 4th call, I blocked her number. The relief felt like dropping a 100-pound weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. But relief mixed with something else: fear. Not of Frank's fists or Mom's tears, but of who I'd be without this dysfunction to define me. The responsible daughter, the one who never said no, the family ATM with a smile. I pulled out my employment records, bank statements, tax returns, started building a different kind of spreadsheet. This one wasn't about tracking what I'd lost, it was about protecting what I had left. The next day, I went to work like nothing had happened, reviewed accounts, flagged discrepancies, wrote reports about other people's financial improprieties while ignoring my own. But during lunch, I walked to the bank and opened a new account at a different institution, started the process of moving my direct deposits, my savings, everything they couldn't touch but somehow always did. "Starting fresh?" the banker asked, making small talk while processing the paperwork. "Something like that." I also made an appointment with an estate attorney for the following week, not because I had much of an estate, but because I needed to understand something that had nagged at me since Dad died. What exactly had happened to his life insurance, his 401k? The house that had been paid off when he died, but somehow needed a new mortgage 2 years later. Mom had always been vague about Dad's finances. "Funeral costs," she'd say, "medical bills. You were too young to understand." But I wasn't too young anymore, and my professional experience had taught me that vagueness about money usually meant someone had something to hide. That weekend, Tyler called from Mom's phone. "Rachel, what's going on?" "Mom's really upset." "She told you what happened." "She said you two had a fight and now you won't talk to her." "Did she mention Frank stabbing me with a fork?" Silence. Then, "She said there was an accident at dinner." "Tyler, he held me down and pushed a carving fork into my arm because I didn't fetch his wine fast enough. That's not an accident." "Come on, Rach, you know how Frank gets when he drinks. He didn't mean it." When someone doesn't mean it for 11 years, Tyler, that's called a pattern. He sighed, 22 years old and already perfecting the sound of exhausted disappointment. "Look, can you just apologize, make peace? Thanksgiving was really awkward after you left, and Mom cried all night." "I'm not apologizing for being assaulted in my mother's dining room." "God, do you always have to be so dramatic? It's just family stuff. Every family has issues. Just family stuff. Like abuse was a quirky tradition. Like violence was a side dish served with the turkey. Tyler had learned well from our mother: minimize, normalize, Prioritize the comfort of the comfortable. You're right, I said. Every family has issues, but not every family member has to tolerate them. I hung up and added his number to the block list. That night, I sat with my laptop and a glass of wine, good wine. Not the cheap stuff Frank bought in boxes, and started writing. Not a journal or a story, but a timeline. Every incident I could remember. Every request for money. Every red flag I'd ignored. The Christmas when Frank threw the gravy boat and Mom said it slipped. The Easter when I showed up with bruised ribs from his playful shove down the porch steps. The 4th of July when he'd held my hand over the grill grate for not watching the burgers, and Mom had rushed me to urgent care with a story about my own clumsiness. By midnight, I had 12 pages, single-spaced. I thought about all the times I'd driven back to that house, knowing what waited for me. All the times I'd written checks I couldn't afford because Mom's tears were harder to bear than my own empty pantry. All the times I'd said family first, like it was a prayer instead of a prison. My arm throbbed where the fork had broken skin, 4 small wounds that would heal in a week, leaving no scar anyone could see, just like all the others. But for the first time, I wasn't interested in hiding the evidence. I was interested in using it. The next morning, I unblocked Mom's number just long enough to send one text. I've documented everything, the money, the bruises, all of it. Contact me again and I'll consider it harassment. Frank comes near me and I'll file a police report. Then I blocked her again before she could respond. But I'd underestimated one thing: I wasn't the only one who'd been documenting. And I wasn't the only one who'd finally had enough. Grandma Lorraine called that afternoon from a number I didn't recognize. "Rachel, honey," she said, her voice exactly as I remembered steel wrapped in velvet. "We need to talk about your father's money." Grandma Lorraine lived 40 minutes from Charlotte in Mount Fairview, the same town where I'd grown up, but in a different world entirely. Her house sat on Maple Street, in the old part of town where the sidewalks were brick and the trees formed cathedral arches over the road. I hadn't been there in 2 years. Mom had made it clear that visiting Dad's family was a betrayal of her new one. I pulled into the driveway on Saturday afternoon, noting the perfectly maintained garden, the American flag hanging from the porch, the same brass door knocker shaped like a pineapple that had been there since before I was born. Everything about Grandma Lorraine's house spoke of permanence, of things built to last. She opened the door before I could knock. 73 years old, silver hair pinned in the same French twist she'd worn to my father's funeral, dressed in pressed slacks and a cardigan despite being at home. Grandma didn't believe in looking disheveled, even for family, especially for family. "Let me see," she said instead of hello. I pushed up my sleeve. The puncture wounds had darkened to deep purple, 4 perfect dots like an animal bite. "Kitchen fork." "Carving fork." She nodded once, decisively. "Come in. I've made apple pie." The house smelled like cinnamon and Murphy's oil soap, exactly as I remembered, everything in its place, every surface gleaming. Dad used to joke that his mother could spot dust from across a room and guilt it into leaving. But underneath the joke was truth. Lorraine Mitchell didn't tolerate disorder in her home or her life. She led me to the kitchen, where a pie cooled on the counter next to a manila folder thick with papers. "Coffee or tea?" "Coffee's fine." She poured from a percolator, not a Keurig or fancy espresso machine, but the same stovetop percolator she'd used for 40 years. Some things, Grandma believed, didn't need improving. "Your mother called me," she said, setting down the mug. "Wanted me to talk sense into you. Said you were being difficult about family obligations." "What did you tell her?" "That she had the wrong number." Grandma cut 2 slices of pie with surgical precision. "Diane hasn't been family since she let that man put his hands on my granddaughter." "You knew." "Honey, I've known since the first time, 4th of July, 6 years ago. You showed up to the church picnic with burn cream on your palm and a story about grilling accidents." She pushed the pie toward me. "I may be old, but I'm not stupid, and I'm certainly not blind." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it. You kept going back, kept making excuses, kept choosing them." She settled into her chair with the careful movements of someone whose joints protested, but whose will didn't yield. But Thursday changed something, didn't it? I could see it in your face at church last Christmas. You were already leaving. Just hadn't picked the date. I thought about denying it, but Grandma had Dad's eyes blue and sharp and impossible to lie to. How could you tell? Same look your father had when he was planning to divorce Diane. The fork clattered from my hand. What? Oh yes, the year before he died. He'd started the paperwork, quietly, carefully. He'd found out about her. Indiscretions. She said the word like it tasted bad. But then the aneurysm took him, and Diane played the grieving widow so well everyone forgot what came before. My chest felt tight. All those years of Mom talking about their perfect marriage, their great love story, how I should be more like her, supportive, understanding, putting my man first, all lies. But that's not why I called, Grandma continued. We need to discuss your inheritance. I didn't get an inheritance. Mom said Dad didn't have life insurance. Your mother says a lot of things. That doesn't make them true. She opened the manila folder, spreading papers across the table. Your father had a $300,000 life insurance policy through his work, plus his 401k, which had about $150,000, and there was a trust. The room seemed to spin. A trust. Set up when you were born. His father, my late husband, left money for all his grandchildren's education. Yours was worth $50,000 when Dad died. Should be worth considerably more now with interest. But Mom said there was nothing. Said the funeral costs, the medical bills. The funeral cost $8,000. I know because I paid half. There were no medical bills. He died instantly. Grandma's voice was flat, factual. Your mother took $500,000 that belonged to you and told you there was nothing? I stared at the papers, account statements, insurance documents, trust paperwork, all dated, all official, all proving my mother had lied to me for 21 years. Where did it go? The house, first. She paid it off right after your father died. Then Frank's truck, his boat, that cabin they bought up at the lake, the one you've never been invited to. And I'd bet if we dug deeper, we'd find more. Gambling debts, bad investments, who knows what else. How is this possible? Don't there have to be lawyers' courts? When you're the surviving spouse and the child is a minor, you have considerable control. She was supposed to preserve it for you, of course, but supervision is limited if no one complains. Grandma leaned back. I tried to intervene when you were younger, but Diane threatened to cut off my access to you entirely, so I waited, watched, documented. She pulled out another folder. This one was thinner but somehow heavier. Photos of checks made out to Frank, bank statements showing large withdrawals, property records for the lake cabin, purchased 2 years after Dad died. You've been building a case? For 15 years, she smiled. And it wasn't a grandmother's smile. It was the expression of a woman who'd raised 3 boys in the 1960s, buried a husband, and learned that nice only got you so far. I was a bookkeeper for 40 years. Rachel, I know how to follow money, and I know how to be patient. But what can we do now? It's been so long. Fraud doesn't have an expiration date when it involves trusts. Neither does fiduciary breach. Your mother had a legal obligation to preserve your inheritance. Instead, she stole it. She pulled out a business card. Harvey Morrison, best estate attorney in 3 counties, also happens to be a friend from church. He's expecting your call Monday morning. I picked up the card. Heavy cardstock, embossed letters, legitimate, real. They'll fight this. Let them. Frank's got a record. Did you know that 2 DUIs and a domestic violence charge from his first marriage? And your mother's been signing your name on tax documents for years, claiming deductions for support she never provided. Harvey found that particularly interesting. How do you know about the tax documents? Because I hired a private investigator 3 years ago. Amazing what you can find when you look. She pushed a third folder across the table. This is just the highlights. Harvey has the full report. I opened it. Police reports from Frank's previous arrests. Photos of him at the casino. bank records showing suspicious deposits and withdrawals, a paper trail of destruction funded by my dead father's money. "Why now?" I asked. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because now you're ready. Now you're angry enough to fight instead of forgive. Now you understand that family isn't about blood, it's about behavior." She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was tissue paper thin, but her grip was strong. "Your father would be furious if he knew what they'd done, but he'd be proud of who you've become despite it." I don't even know where to start. "You start by eating your pie. Then you call Harvey on Monday. Then you let me help you the way I should have years ago." She squeezed my hand. "They took your money, honey, but worse than that, they took your peace, your safety, your belief that family meant protection instead of predation. And we're going to take it back. Every penny, with interest." She released my hand and picked up her fork. "But more than that, we're going to take their power. No more bleeding in silence. No more paying for the privilege of being abused. No more choosing them over yourself." I took a bite of pie. It was perfect hard apples, flaky crust, just enough cinnamon, the taste of every autumn at this table before everything went wrong, before Frank, before the lies, before I learned that love could be a weapon if you let the wrong people wield it. "There's more," Grandma said quietly. "The trust, it's structured oddly. There are provisions about moral turpitude, about fitness of guardianship. Harvey thinks we might be able to prove your mother violated those provisions, if we can. If we can, she might have to pay it back. With penalties." I thought about Mom in her department store uniform, counting out change for customers, about Frank's truck, already 5 years old and starting to rust, about the lake cabin they couldn't afford to maintain, about what $500,000 plus 20 years of penalties might mean to people who'd never saved a dime they didn't steal from someone else. "Good," I said, and meant it. Grandma smiled. This time, it reached her eyes. "That's my girl. Now, let's talk about Thanksgiving." "I'm not going back there." "Of course not. You'll come here. I'm inviting some people, Harvey and his wife, a few others who've been wondering where you've been. We'll have a proper dinner. No forks as weapons, no begging disguised as obligation. Just family, real family." "That sounds perfect." "And Rachel. Bring the photographs, the ones of your injuries, all of them." "Why?" "Because Harvey's wife is a former prosecutor. She'll want to see them." Grandma's smile turned sharp again. "Did I mention she specialized in domestic violence cases? Such a lovely woman, very passionate about her work, even in retirement." I looked at this woman who'd waited 15 years for me to be ready, who'd built a case while I built spreadsheets, who'd planned my escape before I knew I needed one. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, honey, always have, even when you couldn't love yourself enough to leave." She started gathering the papers. "Now, take these copies, study them. Monday morning, we go to war. And if they come after me before then..." She walked to the hall closet and pulled out a Louisville Slugger, its handle worn smooth from use. "This was your grandfather's. Still works just fine." I laughed, actually laughed for the first time since Thursday. "You're going to protect me with a baseball bat." "Honey, I protected 3 boys and a husband with this bat. Your Uncle Tommy still won't talk about the night he tried to sneak in drunk at 17. She leaned it back in the closet. "But you won't need it. Cowards like Frank only attack when they think they'll win, and his winning days are over." I left an hour later with a bag full of documents, half a pie, and something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Not the fragile kind that breaks under pressure, but the solid kind built on evidence and allies and righteous anger channeled into action. Mom had been right about one thing: family first. She just never understood that family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up with pie and proof when you're ready to fight back. Monday morning came like a reckoning. I called in sick to work the first time in 3 years and met Grandma at Piedmont Federal Bank at 9 a.m. sharp. She wore her navy suit, the one she'd worn to Grandfather's funeral, like armor for battle. Harvey Morrison was already there, waiting in the lobby with a leather briefcase that looked older than me. He was exactly what you'd expect from a small-town attorney who'd been practicing for 40 years, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet authority that made bank managers nervous. "Miss Mitchell," he said, shaking my hand, "I've reviewed your grandmother's files. We have quite a situation here." That was like calling a tornado quite a bit of wind, but lawyers, I was learning, had their own language for catastrophe. The bank manager, a young woman named Patricia who couldn't have been older than me, led us to a conference room. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled up the trust documents on her computer. "The Mitchell Family Trust," she read. "Established 1995 by Robert Mitchell Sr. for the benefit of his grandchildren." She scrolled through screens. "Current balance, $217,000. My legs went weak. I'd been preparing for maybe $80,000, $100, $1,000 at most, but $217,000. That was a house, a future, a life I could have lived if my mother hadn't stolen it. How I managed. "Compound interest," Harvey said. "Good initial investment choices. And," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "it appears someone has been adding to it." Grandma shifted in her seat. "Robert, my late husband, he was very specific about education funding. The trust was set up to pay out for college expenses directly to institutions. But after your father died, your mother never submitted any requests. Not for your community college, not for state university, nothing. Because she didn't want anyone looking too closely," Harvey added. "The trust has a supervision clause. Any withdrawal over $10,000 requires documentation and approval from the trustee." "Who's the trustee?" "Originally, it was your father. After his death, it should have transferred to you at age 25 or to a court-appointed administrator if you were unaware of the trust's existence." Harvey pulled out a document. "Your mother filed paperwork claiming you were unreachable and had herself appointed interim administrator." "Unreachable. I lived 90 minutes away." "Yes, well, fraud tends to require lies." He spread more papers across the table. "But here's where it gets interesting. As administrator, she had limited powers. She could invest the money, manage it, but significant withdrawals required documentation. So instead of taking from the trust directly, she took everything else," I finished. "The life insurance, the 401k, left the trust alone thinking no one would notice." "Exactly. Except," Patricia pulled up another screen. "There's an anomaly. In 2017, there was a withdrawal request for $50,000. A loan against the trust for emergency medical expenses. It was approved by the administrator, your mother, and a co-signer." She turned the screen toward us. There was my signature. Except it wasn't. The R was wrong. The L too looped. I'd been signing my name the same way since high school. And this wasn't it. "That's forgery," I said. "Yes," Harvey agreed. "It certainly appears to be. Patricia, we'll need copies of everything, every document, every transaction, every signature card." Patricia nodded, looking relieved to have clear instructions. "I'll have our legal department pull everything. This is very serious." "Where did the $50,000 go?" I asked. Harvey consulted his notes. "According to the documentation, it was for your back surgery." "I've never had back surgery." "No, but Frank did. That same year." He pulled out a medical bill. Interesting coincidence. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. The trust documents, the forged loan paperwork, the insurance policies that had been cashed out without my knowledge, the 401k that had been drained before I even knew it existed. By the time we finished, Patricia looked sick, and I felt hollowed out. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build our case, criminal charges for the forgery, that's the clearest path, but also civil action for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and conversion of assets." Harvey closed his briefcase. "They'll have to account for every penny, and if they can't—" "Which they can't," Grandma interjected. "I've seen their finances. They're leveraged to the hilt. Second mortgage on the house, equity loan on the cabin, credit cards maxed out. Then they'll have to liquidate assets to pay restitution, the house, the cabin, vehicles, everything. I thought about Mom in her department store vest, talking about family first, about Frank and his recliner, demanding respect he'd never earned, about Tyler, coasting through college on my father's money while I worked 3 jobs. "Do it," I said. "All of it." Harvey nodded. "I'll file the paperwork this week. Fair warning once we do this. There's no going back. They'll know you're serious. They'll likely try to contact you, manipulate you, possibly threaten you. Let them try." But I underestimated how quickly they'd move. That evening, I came home to find Frank's truck in my apartment complex parking lot. He was leaning against it, trying to look casual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands kept clenching and unclenching. I parked far away and called 911. "There's a man who's threatened me before waiting at my apartment. I have a documented history of domestic violence with him." The dispatcher took my information, promised to send a unit. I waited in my locked car, watching Frank check his phone repeatedly. Finally, he started walking toward the building entrance. That's when I saw what he was holding: a key. My spare key, the one I'd hidden at Mom's house for emergencies. The police arrived before he could use it. 2 officers, both younger than me, but they took one look at Frank red-faced, arguing, holding a key to an apartment that wasn't his, and understood the situation immediately. "Sir, we need you to leave the premises," the taller officer said. "This is family business," Frank insisted. "I'm her father." "Stepfather," I corrected from across the parking lot. "And he's not welcome here." "Rachel, don't be stupid. We need to talk about this trust situation. Your mother's very upset." "Sir," the officer said again, "you need to leave. Now." Frank looked between us, calculating. For a moment, I saw what he wanted to do: the violence just under the surface, the rage at being challenged. But he also saw the officers' hands resting on their service weapons, their body cameras recording everything. "This isn't over," he said, throwing the key on the ground. "You ungrateful little—" "Sir," the officer's voice was sharp now. "Leave. Don't come back. Don't contact her again." Frank got in his truck, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot. The officers waited until he was gone, then took my statement. I showed them the photos of my injuries from Thanksgiving, explained about the trust, the forgery, the ongoing situation. "You should consider a restraining order," the younger officer suggested. "With this documentation, you'd likely get one." "I'll talk to my lawyer." They gave me a case number, assured me they'd add this to the file. After they left, I picked up the spare key from the ground and went inside. Changed my locks that night, installed a doorbell camera the next day, started the paperwork for a restraining order by Wednesday. But the real surprise came Thursday afternoon when Grandma called. "You need to come over," she said. "Bring Harvey if you can. Diane just left, and you need to see what she brought." I met them at Grandma's house an hour later. On the kitchen table was a cardboard box filled with papers, old papers, yellow with age, some water-stained, all clearly neglected. "Your mother dropped this off," Grandma said. "Said it was your father's things, that I should have them." Then she started crying about how we were destroying her family. Harvey was already sorting through the papers with gloved hands. Insurance policies, bank statements, investment records. He paused. All from before his death. "Why would she give us these?" I asked. "Because she's scared," Grandma said. "She's trying to look cooperative, hoping we'll go easier on her if she helps." Harvey held up a document. "Or because she doesn't know what's in here." He showed us the paper, a bank statement from an account I'd never heard of. "This is from a different bank. Shows regular deposits. Looks like—" He studied it closer. "Your father was moving money, preparing for something." "The divorce," Grandma said quietly. "He was protecting assets." We went through everything. Dad had been systematic, careful. He'd opened accounts Mom didn't know about, moved money slowly, quietly, built a safety net for the future he'd never get to see. And then Harvey found it, a single sheet of paper tucked between 2 bank statements. Handwritten, Dad's writing, which I'd recognize anywhere. "For Rachel," It read, "If something happens to me, know that everything I have is yours. Your mother is not the person I thought I married. I'm trying to fix things, to protect you. But if I can't be strong, be smart. Don't let them dim your light. All my love, Dad." The room went silent. I read it again and again. This man I'd idolized, who I'd thought had left me unprotected, he'd tried. He'd seen what was coming and tried to save me from it. "This changes things," Harvey said quietly. "This shows intent. Shows he was actively trying to separate assets because he knew." He trailed off. "Knew what she was," Grandma finished. "We all did, eventually, but by then it was too late." "Not too late," I said, folding the letter carefully. "Just delayed." "There's more," Harvey said, pulling out another document. "This account, the one he was moving money to, it's still open, still active, with 21 years of interest." "How much?" He showed me the statement, $73,000 in change. "She never knew," I breathed. "All these years, she never knew he'd hidden money from her. The account was in his name only, with you as beneficiary, without this statement, without knowing which bank. She'd never have found it." Harvey smiled grimly. "Your mother just handed us another $73,000 she stole from you without even knowing it." I looked at the box of papers. Mom's attempt to buy mercy had instead given us more ammunition. Her fake tears and manipulation had backfired spectacularly. "Harvey," I said, "I want to add something to the lawsuit." "What's that?" "Intentional infliction of emotional distress, pain and suffering, whatever else you can think of. I want them to understand that every action has consequences." He nodded. "I'll draft the amendments tonight." Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. "Your father would be so proud." I held the letter he'd written, this evidence of love and foresight and protection attempted against impossible odds. I think he'd mostly be relieved that finally, after all these years, someone's standing up to them. "Not someone," Grandma corrected. "Family, real family." And for the first time since I was 8 years old, I truly understood what that meant. The paperwork consumed my life for the next 2 weeks. Harvey filed the civil suit on a Tuesday, and the criminal complaint for forgery on Wednesday. By Thursday, my phone was ringing nonstop numbers I didn't recognize, voicemails I didn't listen to. Tyler tried to reach me through social media, through work email. Even had a friend who worked at my bank try to guilt me in the break room. "Your mom's a wreck," the friend someone I'd barely spoken to before said. "Tyler says you're trying to destroy your family over money." "I'm trying to recover stolen money," I corrected. "There's a difference." But the real education came from building the complete financial picture. Harvey had hired a forensic accountant, a sharp woman named Dolores who treated numbers like puzzle pieces. She spread papers across Grandma's dining room table, creating a timeline of theft that was staggering in its scope. "Let's start with the life insurance," Dolores said, adjusting her reading glasses. $300,000, received by your mother as beneficiary. Standard so far. But look here." She pointed to bank records. "The full amount was deposited, then immediately dispersed. $40,000 to pay off the house. Fair enough. But then $60,000 in cash withdrawals over 6 months. No receipts, no trail." "Gambling," Grandma said. "Frank had a problem even then." "Then there's the 401k, valued at $147,000 at time of death. Your mother cashed it out. Paid the early withdrawal penalties, nearly $40,000 in penalties. Mind you, and walked away with about $90,000. Dolores shook her head. "Financially irresponsible, even if it hadn't been theft." She walked us through each transaction, each decision that prioritized immediate gratification over long-term security. The pattern was clear. Take everything liquid, spend it fast. Worry about consequences never. "But here's what really interests me," Dolores said, pulling out a new set of documents. "The house, paid off with life insurance money. Yes, but then remortgaged 2 years later. Then a home equity line of credit. Then a second mortgage. The house your father left free and clear now has $180,000 in debt against it." "For what?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. Boats, motorcycles, an RV that was repossessed after 6 months, vacations to Myrtle Beach and Gatlinburg. Nothing saved, nothing invested, just consumed. I thought about all the times Mom had cried poverty, all the times I'd skip meals to send her money for groceries or utilities, all while they were spending my father's life's work on toys and trips I was never invited to join. "What about the trust?" Harvey asked. "That's the interesting part, because it required documentation for withdrawals. It's actually the most intact. The $50,000 fraudulent loan is the only major hit, which tells me something they knew they were on shaky ground with it. The forgery was desperate, sloppy. They must have needed money badly that year." "Frank's surgery," I said, "and the cabin. They bought it the same year." Dolores nodded. "A pattern of living beyond their means, funded by theft. In my professional opinion, they've stolen approximately $540,000 from you over the past 21 years, including interest and investment opportunity costs." The number sat in the air like a physical presence. $500,000. More money than many people see in a lifetime. "Can we recover it?" "Some. The trust money. Certainly. The hidden account your grandmother discovered. Possibly restitution for the forgery. As for the rest..." She gestured at the papers. "You can't get blood from a stone, but you can get assets. The house, primarily, the cabin, vehicles, retirement accounts, if any exist." "They won't go quietly," Harvey warned. "This kind of money, these kinds of charges, people get desperate." He was right. That Sunday, I was leaving Grandma's after dinner when I noticed a familiar truck following me. Not Frank's Tyler's. He stayed 3 cars back, but I'd learned to be paranoid. I took random turns, doubled back, finally pulled into a police station parking lot. He drove past without stopping, but the message was clear: they were watching. The restraining order helped. The judge granted it based on the Thanksgiving assault and Frank's attempted entry to my apartment. Frank couldn't come within 500 feet of me, couldn't contact me directly or through third parties. But restraining orders were just paper, and paper didn't stop someone determined to intimidate. The real escalation came through official channels. Mom hired a lawyer, not a good one, but loud enough to make noise. He filed motions claiming elder abuse against Grandma, saying we were manipulating a vulnerable senior citizen for financial gain. The irony of Mom claiming to protect Grandma, whom she'd barely spoken to in a decade, wasn't lost on anyone. "Let them file," Grandma said when Harvey called with the news. "I've been hoping for a chance to tell a judge exactly what I think of Diane's concern for my well-being." The lawyer also claimed the trust documents were forgeries, that I was lying about the assault, that this was all an elaborate scheme to steal from my loving family. Each claim was more ridiculous than the last, but they all required responses. All cost time and money to refute. "They're trying to bury us in paperwork," Harvey explained. "Make it so expensive and exhausting that we give up." Classic defense of the guilty. But Dolores had found something that changed the game. Buried in the box of documents Mom had unwittingly provided was a credit application from 2018. On it, she'd listed assets including Mitchell Family Trust, $200,000 as collateral for a loan. "She knew," Dolores said simply. "This proves she knew about the trust's value and tried to leverage it. That's intent to defraud." We were building our case document by document, evidence by evidence. I created my own spreadsheet tracking everything, every piece of paper, every date, every connection. My audit training finally serving my own interests instead of everyone else's. Late at night, I'd lie in bed thinking about compound interest, not just financial, but emotional. How each small betrayal had built on the last. How each dollar stolen had represented not just money but possibility. College without debt, a car that didn't break down monthly, the chance to save, to build, to choose my life instead of funding theirs. One evening, Harvey called with news. "The district attorney is interested. The forgery is clear-cut. But with the pattern of financial abuse, they're considering additional charges, fraud, elder financial abuse for the trust violations, possibly racketeering if we can prove ongoing conspiracy." Racketeering isn't that for organized crime? Your mother and Frank organized to commit crimes. The law doesn't require cement shoes and violin cases. I thought about them in orange jumpsuits instead of their lake cabin. It wasn't justice would be having my father back, having grown up safe, having the life they stole. But it was something. There's one more thing, Harvey said. The forensic accountant found irregularities in their tax returns, claiming deductions for supporting you when you were self-sufficient, possible disability fraud for Frank's back. He's been collecting checks while working under the table. The IRS might be interested. Do it, I said. Whatever you can prove, file it. Rachel. His voice was gentle. Once we involve federal authorities, this becomes very serious. Prison serious. Are you prepared for that? I touched my arm where the fork wounds had finally faded, leaving only memory. Thought about every Christmas alone because money was tight while they vacationed. Every birthday card empty of everything but guilt. Every time I'd apologized for existing in my own family. I've been preparing for this my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it until now. The next morning, I met with Dolores one more time. She had final numbers, final projections. We'd identified $73,000 in the hidden account, $217,000 in the trust, and potential recovery of another $150,000 through asset liquidation and restitution. Not the full $500,000 they'd stolen, but enough. Enough to build the life they'd tried to prevent. You know what the real irony is, Dolores said as we packed up the papers. If they'd just been decent to you, none of this would have happened. You'd have shared it with them willingly, helped them responsibly. Their greed cost them everything. I thought about that as I drove home. How different life might have been with love instead of manipulation, with protection instead of predation, with family that acted like family. But then I thought about Grandma, with her file folders and her baseball bat, and her patient faith that I'd eventually fight back. About Harvey, working for half his usual rate because he believed in justice. About Dolores, hunting through numbers like a bloodhound seeking truth. Maybe I'd lost my first family, but I was building a better one. Document by document, truth by truth, one paper trail at a time. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, 3 weeks before Christmas. Grandma's handwriting on cream-colored cardstock, formal and old-fashioned. Mrs. Lorraine Mitchell requests your presence for Sunday dinner, December 22nd, 4:00 p.m. Kindly RSVP. I called her immediately. What are you planning? Just a little family gathering, she said, too innocent. Nothing fancy. I'm an old woman who wants her loved ones around her table. Grandma. Wear something nice, dear, and bring your appetite. I'm making pot roast. She hung up before I could ask more questions. But I knew that tone the same one she'd used before announcing she'd hired a private investigator. Grandma was planning something. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal procedures. The criminal case was moving forward, with Frank and Mom both charged with forgery and fraud. Their lawyer kept filing delays, but the DA seemed confident. The civil case was stronger still, especially after Dolores found more hidden accounts, more evidence of systematic theft. But it was the IRS audit that really had them panicked. Tyler called from a blocked number, catching me at work. They're going to lose everything, he said without preamble. The house, the cabin, their retirement, everything. They should have thought of that before they stole everything. It wasn't stealing. They were managing your money because you were a kid. I haven't been a kid for 11 years, Tyler, and managing doesn't mean spending it on boats and vacations. You gotta go to college. I paid for college, working 3 jobs while you played basketball on Dad's dime. Silence. Then, he wasn't your dad. No, I agreed. My dad was the one who tried to protect me from this, whose money you're living on while pretending I'm the bad guy. Family forgives. I hung up. Family forgives. Family first. Family stands together. All the mantras I'd been taught, all designed to protect the guilty and silence the victims. December 22nd came cold and bright. I arrived at Grandma's to find several cars already in the driveway. Through the window, I could see people milling around, dressed in their Sunday best. There she is. Grandma opened the door before I could knock. She wore her pearl necklace and the brooch Grandpa had given her for their 40th anniversary, battle armor disguised as heirloom jewelry. Inside, I recognized some faces. Harvey and his wife Margaret, who turned out to be the former prosecutor Grandma had mentioned. Dolores was there too, chatting with a man I didn't know but who had banker written all over him, several couples from Grandma's church, and in the corner, nursing a cup of coffee, was a woman who looked familiar, but I couldn't place. "Rachel, dear, come meet everyone properly." Grandma took my arm, leading me around the room. The banker was from the trust department. The church couples were all professionals, another lawyer, an accountant, a real estate agent who specialized in distressed properties, and the familiar woman. "Janet Morrison," she said, shaking my hand. "I used to work with your mother at Fletcher's department store." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Grandma smiled. "Oh, good. The last guests are here." She opened the door to reveal Mom and Frank, Tyler trailing behind them. They stood frozen on the porch, clearly not expecting a house full of people. "Diane," Grandma said pleasantly, "so glad you could make it. Do come in." "Mother Mitchell," Mom stammered. She only called Grandma that when she was nervous. "We didn't realize you were having a party." "Not a party, just a family dinner. Everyone here is family, in one way or another." Grandma stepped aside. "Don't be shy." They entered like they were walking into a courtroom, which I was beginning to realize they were. Grandma orchestrated the seating with military precision. Mom and Frank at one end of the dining room table, me at the other. Everyone else filled in between a buffer of witnesses. "Before we eat," Grandma announced, "I thought we should handle some family business. After all, that's what family does, we handle things together." She walked to the sideboard and picked up a manila envelope. "Diane, I believe you've been served with various legal documents, but there are some things lawyers can't say that family should." Mom's face had gone pale. Frank's was heading toward purple. "This is an ambush!" "No, dear. An ambush implies surprise attack. You've known this was coming since you stole from a child." Grandma pulled out a photograph of me at 8, standing between my parents at my birthday party. "This child, remember her? The one you were supposed to protect." "We did protect her. We raised her." "You tolerated her. There's a difference." Grandma pulled out another photo, the one I'd taken of the fork wounds. "This is protection." Margaret, the former prosecutor, leaned forward. "Those wounds are consistent with deliberate assault. In my experience, domestic violence escalates when victims begin asserting independence." "It was an accident," Frank muttered. Like the burn was an accident, the bruised ribs, the bloody nose that sent her to school with a lie about walking into a door. Grandma had photos of everything, my meticulous documentation, printed and laminated. 23 documented injuries over 11 years. That's not accident. That's pattern. "You can't prove." "Actually, we can." This from Harvey. "Emergency room records, school nurse reports, all obtained legally through the discovery process." Janet Morrison spoke up. "I remember when you came shopping. Diane, always buying things for Frank and Tyler, never for Rachel. I wondered why she never got new clothes when you were spending hundreds on Tyler's sneakers." "That's not. Family business is private." "Not when it involves theft," the banker said quietly. "The trust violations alone constitute felony-level fraud. The pattern of withdrawals, the forged signatures, the deliberate deception. I've been banking 40 years, and this is one of the clearest cases of fiduciary breach I've seen." Mom started crying. Real tears this time. Not the manufactured kind she used for manipulation. "We were just trying to survive. Robert left us with nothing." "Robert left you with a paid-off house and $500,000, Dolores corrected. "I've seen the records. You had everything. You chose to spend it. On family, on making a life. On gambling, on toys, on a cabin you couldn't afford while your daughter worked 3 jobs to pay for ramen." This from the real estate agent. "By the way, that cabin worth maybe $90,000 in this market? The $150,000 you paid was about $60,000 too much. Even your theft was financially incompetent. Tyler finally spoke. This is cruel. You're all just attacking them. No, I said, my first words since they'd arrived. This is accountability, something I should have demanded years ago. They're your parents. She's my mother. He's her husband who assaulted me regularly while she watched. And you're my half-brother who benefited from money stolen from me while calling me dramatic for objecting. I looked at each of them in turn. You want to talk about cruel is making a child feel guilty for existing. Cruel is stealing her future to fund your present. Cruel is teaching her that love comes with a price tag and the bill is always due. Grandma returned to the sideboard, picking up a second envelope. This contains an offer. One time, non-negotiable. Sign over the trust without contest. Agree to full restitution for the forgery. Vacate the house within 60 days. It'll be sold to partially cover what you owe. Drop all countersuits. Accept the criminal plea deal the DA is offering. And if we don't, Frank's voice was pure belligerence. Margaret smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. Then we proceed to trial. All of it. Criminal charges for assault, fraud, forgery, elder abuse, civil suits for conversion, intentional infliction of emotional distress, punitive damages, IRS prosecution for tax fraud. I've consulted with the current DA. He's very interested in making an example of family financial abuse. Prison time, Harvey added helpfully. Significant prison time, 5 to 10 for the fraud alone, more for the assault charges, and that's before the federal charges. You can't. We can. Grandma's voice cut through Frank's bluster. And we will. You stole from my granddaughter. You hurt her. You made her doubt her worth and pay for your failures. That ends now. Mom was sobbing. Real, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. For a moment, I almost felt something. Then I remembered all the times she'd turned away while Frank raged. All the times she'd chosen his comfort over my safety. All the times she'd cried about money while spending what was mine. Why, she asked between sobs, why are you doing this? Because she deserves justice, Grandma said simply, and you deserve consequences. The room fell silent except for Mom's crying. Frank's face had gone from purple to gray. Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. You have 48 hours to decide, Harvey said. The offer expires at 5 p.m. Tuesday. After that, we proceed to trial. Get out, Grandma said, still pleasant. This table is for family. They left in shambles, Mom still crying, Frank muttering threats too quiet to be actionable, Tyler shooting me looks of pure hatred. The door closed behind them with a final sound. Well, Grandma said, returning to her hostess mode, who's ready for pot roast? The dinner that followed was surreal. We ate and talked like we hadn't just destroyed 3 lives. But that was wrong, we hadn't destroyed anything. We'd simply stopped enabling destruction. We'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over false peace. That was quite something, Margaret said over dessert. I've prosecuted hundreds of cases, but family theft hits different. The betrayal is so complete. Will they take the deal? I asked Harvey. They'd be fools not to. Prison versus probation, asset forfeiture versus bankruptcy. It's not really a choice. They'll take it, Grandma said confidently. Diane's scared of prison, and Frank's a coward. They'll sign. She was right. Tuesday afternoon, Harvey called to confirm. They'd signed everything. The trust was mine. The hidden account was mine. The house would be sold. Proceeds to me after debts were paid. They'd pled guilty to reduced charges probation for Mom. 6 months minimum security for Frank due to his record. It's over, Harvey said. You won. But sitting in my apartment that night, I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt empty. 21 years of fighting for crumbs of love, of paying for the privilege of family, of accepting pain as the price of belonging over. The money would help. I could go back to school, get my MBA, buy a reliable car, start the investment portfolio I'd always dreamed of, build the life they'd tried to steal. But money couldn't buy back the years, couldn't erase the scars, couldn't give me parents who'd chosen me over themselves. My phone buzzed. A text from Grandma. I'm proud of you. Your father would be too. This was never about the money, it was about your worth. Never forget what you're worth. I looked around my small apartment, at the spreadsheet still open on my laptop, at the photos I'd finally removed from their hiding place, at the letter from Dad, now framed on my desk. Maybe I hadn't won, but I'd stopped losing. And sometimes, that's the greatest victory of all. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Thursday, 2 weeks after they'd signed the papers, not from Mom's phone or Frank's, but from Wake Medical Center. Is this Rachel Mitchell? The voice was professionally calm. Your brother Tyler gave us your number. There's been an accident. I sat up, instantly alert. What kind of accident? Your stepfather, Frank Morrison. He was brought in about an hour ago. Alcohol was involved. He's stable, but I have a restraining order against him. A pause. I see. Well, he's been asking for you, quite insistently. Your mother is here as well. No. The word came out harder than I intended. I won't be coming. Thank you for calling. I hung up before they could guilt me further, but sleep was impossible after that. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring again. It did. 15 minutes later, Tyler. He's dying, he said without preamble. Liver's failing. Has been for months. Apparently, the accident just made it obvious. That's not my problem. Jesus, Rachel, he's dying. Whatever happened between you? What happened is he assaulted me repeatedly while stealing my inheritance. He's in this situation because of his own choices. Mom needs you. Mom needed me to be her ATM and punching bag. I'm neither anymore. You're really not coming, even now. I thought about it. Really thought about it. The trained response to run when family called. To forgive the unforgivable. To show up and shut up and pay up. But that girl was gone. Bled out through fork wounds and burnt flesh and bruised ribs. No, I'm really not coming. He hung up on me. I blocked his number and went back to bed. The next morning, Grandma called. Diane left 6 voicemails on my machine. Frank's in bad shape. I know. The hospital called. Are you going? Would you? She was quiet for a moment. No, but I'm old and bitter. You're young. I don't want you to have regrets. My only regret is not leaving sooner. Then that's your answer, honey. Stand by it. But standing by it was harder than I'd expected. Mom found ways around the blocked numbers calling from the hospital. From Janet Morrison's phone. From numbers I didn't recognize, I stopped answering unknown calls. She sent emails to my work address until I had it block her. She even sent a certified letter. Pages of guilt and manipulation dressed up as a mother's plea. Frank died 6 days later, I found out from Harvey, who'd heard from their lawyer. Liver failure complicated by pneumonia. The funeral is Saturday. They'll expect me there. Expectation and obligation are different things. You owe them nothing. But Tyler wasn't done. He showed up at my office Friday afternoon, slipping past security with a visitor's badge. I found him waiting by my desk when I returned from a meeting. Get out. 5 minutes. Please, just 5 minutes. Security was a phone call away. But looking at him 22 years old, red-eyed, wearing Frank's old leather jacket, I saw the little boy who'd never had to fetch wine or fear forks. The golden child who'd never understood why his sister flinched at raised voices. 5 minutes, in the conference room, with the door open. He followed me to the small meeting room, sat across from me like this was a business negotiation, which maybe it was. Mom's lost it, he started. She just sits and cries. The house is in foreclosure. Did you know that? They were behind even before all this, and now with Frank gone, she can't afford anything. That's not my problem. I know. You've made that clear. He leaned forward. But Rachel, she's our mother. She's your mother. Mine would have protected me. She was doing her best. No, she was doing what was easy. There's a difference. He pulled out his phone, showing me a photo. Mom at Frank's bedside, looking haggard and small. Look at her. Look what this has done to her. What this has done, Tyler. She stole $500,000. She watched Frank hurt me for over a decade. She chose him every single time. This isn't something that happened to her. It's consequences for what she did. People make mistakes. Mistakes are accidental. This was systematic, deliberate, repeated despite multiple chances to stop. I stood up. Your 5 minutes are up. The funeral is none of my concern. He raised you. He terrorized me, and she let him. I moved toward the door. Go home, Tyler. Comfort your mother. Plan your funeral. But do it without me. He stood too, Frank's jacket hanging loose on his smaller frame. You know what? You're just like Grandma Lorraine. Cold, unforgiving. No wonder Mom never wanted you around her. Good. Being like Grandma is the highest compliment you could give me. She's the only one who ever stood up for me. The only one who ever put my safety over their comfort. I held the door open. Goodbye, Tyler. He left, but not quietly. I heard him telling the receptionist that I was heartless, that family meant nothing to me. She nodded politely and waited until he was in the elevator to roll her eyes. Everyone in the office had seen the bruises over the years. They knew exactly what kind of family I was walking away from. Saturday came gray and drizzling. I spent the morning at Grandma's, helping her reorganize her filing system. Neither of us mentioned what was happening across town, but she made my favorite cookies and kept my coffee cup full. Harvey called, she said around noon. The house sold. Closing is next month. After the mortgages and liens are paid, there should be about $40,000 left for restitution. It's not about the money anymore. No, it never was. But it's nice to get some back anyway. She pulled out a new folder. I've been thinking about your future. The money from the trust, the hidden accounts, the restitution invested properly. You could retire by 50. I have to finish my MBA first. Already planning that. Are you? She smiled. Your father would be so proud. He always said you got his head for numbers. We worked in comfortable silence after that, organizing papers that told the story of justice served cold but thoroughly, around 2. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview. He's in the ground. Hope you're happy. I showed Grandma. She read it, then deleted it for me. Some people think grief excuses cruelty. They're wrong. Your happiness isn't dependent on their misery, and their misery isn't your responsibility. That evening, back in my apartment, I sat with my laptop and the forms for MBA programs. Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, schools I'd never dreamed I could afford. Now within reach, I started filling out applications, writing essays about overcoming adversity and defining success. My phone rang. Unknown number. This time, I answered. Ms. Mitchell. This is Sharon Hewitt from Social Services. I'm calling about your mother, Diane Morrison. She's listed you as next of kin. I have a restraining order against her. I see. That complicates things. She's been admitted for psychiatric evaluation. Neighbors called after she was found wandering the street in her nightgown, talking about needing to find money for groceries. She's not my responsibility. I understand. We'll make other arrangements. She paused. I'm sorry for your loss. Which one? I asked, but she'd already hung up. I thought about Mom, lost and confused, reaping the whirlwind she'd sown. Thought about Tyler, burying the only father he'd known. Thought about Frank, dying from a lifetime of choices that prioritized momentary pleasure over lasting health. Then I thought about myself, 29 years old, bruised but not broken, scarred but not stopped, free. I submitted the first MBA application at midnight, then another, then another. Each click of submit felt like shedding skin, leaving behind the girl who'd accepted abuse as the price of belonging. 3 days later, Grandma called with news. Diane's been placed in a facility, state-run. Tyler's trying to get power of attorney to access any remaining assets. Let him. There's nothing left to take. No, there isn't. She sounded satisfied. Harvey made sure of that. Every account, every asset, Every possible source of funds has been properly allocated for restitution. She's effectively judgment-proof because she owns nothing. What about Tyler? What about him? He's an adult with a college education paid for by stolen money. He can get a job like everyone else. I thought about warning him that the IRS might come looking for gift tax on his tuition. Decided against it. He'd figure it out. Or he wouldn't. Not my circus anymore. That night, I dreamed about my father for the first time in years. Not nightmares about his death or fantasies about him saving me. Just a simple dream where we sat at Grandma's kitchen table, going over numbers, planning a future. He looked proud. I woke up crying, but they were clean tears. The kind that wash away infection instead of spreading it. 2 weeks later, Harvey called with final numbers. Between the trust, the hidden accounts, the house sale, and seized assets, I'd recovered $310,000. Not the full $500,000 they'd stolen, but enough, more than enough. There's one more thing, he said. Tyler's been calling, wants to know if you'll consider a payment plan for him to buy back some of Frank's things from the estate sale. Frank's things. Tools, mostly, some fishing equipment, sentimental value. He says, I thought about it. Thought about Tyler in Frank's jacket, carrying on the legacy of a man who'd shown him only the good side, the side I'd never seen. He can have them, no charge. That's generous. No, it's strategic. He wants to remember Frank. Let him carry those tools and that jacket and those memories. Maybe he'll also carry the weight of knowing what they cost. Harvey chuckled. You're definitely Lorraine's granddaughter. That felt like the highest praise possible. Because Grandma had been right all along, family isn't about blood or obligation or forgiveness without repentance. It's about showing up with pie and proof when someone's ready to fight back. It's about keeping records and keeping faith that justice delayed isn't always justice denied. It's about knowing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable one more minute of destruction. The restraining order was still in effect. The no-contact directive still stood. But I didn't need paper to protect me anymore. I had something better, the absolute certainty that I'd never go back. Never apologize for existing. Never pay for love that came with interest rates and injury. Frank was in the ground. Mom was in a facility. Tyler was on his own. And I was free. Finally, blessedly, expensively free. Frank was dead, but his ghost haunted the paperwork. 6 weeks after the funeral, Harvey called with updates on the estate settlement. I sat in my apartment, laptop open to MBA program websites, listening to him detail the final untangling of my stolen inheritance. The IRS audit revealed more than we initially thought, he said. Frank had been collecting disability for 5 years while working construction under the table. They're pursuing the estate for $67,000 in fraudulent benefits. The estate that has no assets because everything went to restitution. Exactly. Which brings us to your mother. Papers rustled on his end. The facility contacted me as her last known legal contact. She's been diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. They're recommending long-term care. Paid for by the state, I assume, since she's indigent. Yes, but Tyler's been making noise about getting her released to his care. I almost laughed. Tyler, who'd never held a job longer than a summer, planning to care for our mother on his zero income. Good luck with that. There's something else. We received a package at the office addressed to you. From Diane. The facility screened it, just papers. They said, should I forward it? I thought about it. Did I want to read whatever guilt-laden manifesto she'd penned from her hospital bed? Then again, documentation had been my salvation. Maybe hers would be educational too. Send it. I'll add it to the file. The package arrived 3 days later, not a letter, as I'd expected, but a journal. Worn leather cover, pages yellowed with age. I recognized it immediately, Mom's diary from when she'd first married Frank. I'd seen her writing in it years ago, before she'd hidden it away. I made coffee before opening it, steeling myself for whatever revision of history she'd constructed. But the first entry stopped me cold. September 15th, 2005. Frank hit me today. Rachel was at school. He said I was too soft on her. that she needed a firm hand. When I disagreed, he showed me what firm meant. I can't let Rachel see the bruise. She's already lost so much. I read that again, then again. Mom knew, from the beginning. She knew what Frank was, and she'd stayed anyway. The entries painted a picture I'd never imagined. Mom, caught between protecting me and protecting herself, gradually choosing self-preservation until it became habit. Each incident minimized, rationalized, rewritten until she believed her own lies. December 2nd, 2005. Frank says Rachel's too sensitive, that she exaggerates. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm babying her. He's trying to make her tougher. That's what men do, right? Make you stronger. July 4th, 2009. The burn was an accident. Had to be. Frank loves Rachel in his way. He's just not good at showing it. We'll get her hand looked at. Make up something about fireworks. No need to make it bigger than it is. Page after page of delusion. But between the lines, I could read the truth. A woman so desperate to keep her second chance at marriage that she'd sacrifice her daughter's safety. A mother who'd chosen a man over her child and spent years justifying it. The last entry was recent, dated the day after Frank died. He's gone. The house is gone. Rachel's gone. I gave up everything for a man who gave me nothing but bruises and debt. I see that now. Too late. Always too late. But I can give her the truth. Maybe she'll understand. Maybe she'll forgive. Maybe I'll forgive myself. I won't. I closed the journal and sat in silence. Understanding wasn't forgiveness. Knowing why she'd failed didn't erase the failure. But it did give context to the destruction, two broken people breaking a child because they didn't know how to be whole. My phone rang. Grandma. Harvey told me about the journal. Are you all right? I'm processing. Do you want to come over? I made soup. 20 minutes later, I sat at her kitchen table while she ladled out chicken noodle soup that could cure any ailment except the past. She knew, I said. From the beginning, she knew he was violent. Most of them do, honey. They just think they can fix it, or deserve it, or that it's better than being alone. Grandma sat across from me. I knew too, for what it's worth. Saw the signs. Should have done more. You did everything you could without losing access to me. Still feels like not enough. She reached over and squeezed my hand. But dwelling on what we should have done differently won't change what happened. The question is, what do you do with this information now? I thought about it while eating soup that tasted like safety. Nothing. I do nothing. She made her choices. She's living with the consequences. This doesn't change anything. No, but it might change how you feel about it. I search for words. Sad. For the mother she could have been. For the life we could have had. But not guilty. Not anymore. Good. Guilt was never yours to carry. That weekend, I met with Margaret, Harvey's wife, for coffee. She'd asked to talk about the case. Said she was writing a paper on family financial abuse for a law journal. Your case is textbook in many ways, she said, recorder running between us. But unique in the documentation, most victims don't keep such detailed records. I learned early that my word meant nothing. Paper trails were the only truth they couldn't deny. When did you start documenting? The first time Frank hit me and Mom called it an accident, I was 18. Took a picture with my flip phone. Quality was terrible, but it was proof. That's remarkable presence of mind for someone so young. Not remarkable. Desperate. I knew no one would believe me over them. So I became my own witness. Margaret asked about the money, the pattern of requests, the escalation of violence. I answered clinically, like I was discussing someone else's life. In a way, I was. That girl who'd accepted abuse as the price of family felt like a stranger now. What would you tell other victims? She asked near the end. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And know that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by behavior. Anyone who hurts you and calls it love is lying to you and themselves. And forgiveness. Forgiveness is overrated. Safety is not. She clicked off the recorder. Off the record, I'm glad you got out. And got justice. Is it justice? Though Frank's dead, Mom's broken, Tyler hates me, I got some money back, but at what cost? The cost was paid when they chose to abuse and steal. You just collected what was owed. Never apologize for that. Monday morning brought acceptance letters. Harvard waitlisted. Stanford wanted an interview, but Wharton said yes, with a partial scholarship based on my essay about overcoming adversity. I called Grandma immediately. Philadelphia, she said, and I could hear her smiling. Far enough to be free, close enough to visit, perfect. It doesn't feel real. It's real, honey. You made it real, despite them, because of you. I gave notice at work that afternoon. My boss, who'd watched me come in bruised more than once, congratulated me with genuine warmth. You deserve this. Don't look back. But looking back was inevitable when you were untangling 21 years of knots. Tyler made one last attempt, showing up at my apartment the day before I moved. I watched him through the doorbell camera, knocking and calling my name. He left an envelope under the door. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Mom wants to see you, please. I shredded it. The movers came on a Thursday. I didn't have much furniture, was mostly secondhand. Belongings minimal. The life I'd built while funding theirs had been necessarily small, but small meant portable, meant free. Grandma insisted on driving with me to Philadelphia, her Buick following the moving truck like a guardian angel. We spent the night in a hotel halfway there, eating takeout and watching game shows like we had when I was young, and she'd sneak me away for weekends. I have something for you, she said during a commercial break. She pulled out a small wooden box. This was your father's. I've been saving it for when you were ready. Inside was his college ring, his watch, and a letter. Not the one I'd already framed, but another. This one addressed to Grandma. Mom, if you're reading this, something's happened to me. Please watch over Rachel. Diane isn't who I thought she was. I've tried to protect what I can. But if I'm gone, Rachel will need you. Don't let them dim her light. She's special. Mom, make sure she knows it. Love, Robert. He knew he was sick. He had headaches, dizzy spells. The doctor said stress. But Robert worried it was more. He was right to worry. She closed the box. He loved you so much. Honey, never doubt that. I don't, not anymore. We arrived in Philadelphia on a Friday afternoon. My new apartment was small but clean, in a building full of grad students and young professionals. Grandma helped me unpack, insisting on making the bed with hospital corners and stocking the kitchen with proper supplies. You'll need good pans, she said, unpacking the cast iron skillet she'd brought. And this, she pulled out the pie dish, for when you need to remember home. Grandma. The good home, the one where you're safe and loved and valued. That's your real home, honey. Wherever I am, wherever you are, that's home. She stayed the weekend, helping me settle in, finding the nearest grocery store, the best coffee shop, the safest routes for evening runs, being a grandmother even when I was trying to be a whole new person. I'm proud of you, she said Sunday morning, preparing to leave. Your father would be too. You took the worst they could do and turned it into this. That's not survival, honey. That's triumph. I walked her to her car. This woman who'd waited 15 years for me to be ready to fight, who'd kept records and kept faith, who'd shown me that family could be a choice instead of a sentence. Thank you, I said. For everything, for waiting, for the files, for the baseball bat. She laughed. Thank the bat yourself. It's in your closet, just in case. I won't need it. No, you won't. You've got something better now, the knowledge that you can save yourself, that you already have. She hugged me tight. Call me when you start classes. I want to hear everything. I watched her drive away, then walked back to my new apartment. My apartment, paid for with my money, earned through my job, protected by my boundaries. The journal Mom had sent sat on my desk. I'd brought it, thinking maybe I'd need it for closure, for understanding, for something, but standing in my new space, I realized I didn't. Her story was her story. Her choices were her choices. Her consequences were her consequences. My story was just beginning. I put the journal in a box marked storage and shoved it in the closet next to Grandma's baseball bat. Relics of a war that was over, kept just in case but never to be needed again. That night, I sat at my new desk with my laptop, enrolling in classes, planning my future, no one to support but myself, no one to fear, no one to pay for the privilege of existing. The spreadsheet I'd kept for 11 years documenting theft and abuse was closed. The new one I opened had different columns: tuition, books, living expenses, internship opportunities, graduation timeline, starting salaries, investment projections, numbers that added up to a life. My life. Finally. Outside, Philadelphia hummed with possibility. Tomorrow, orientation started. New city, new school, new chance to be the person they'd tried to prevent. I thought about Mom in her facility, lost in depression and consequences, about Frank in the ground, his liver finally collecting on debts his fists had written, about Tyler, carrying tools and grudges and the weight of being the favored child of failed parents. Then I stopped thinking about them at all. The bruises had faded, the wounds had scarred, the money had been recovered, most of it. Anyway, enough to build on, enough to begin. In the morning, I'd walk into Wharton as Rachel Mitchell, MBA candidate, not someone's daughter or victim or ATM, just Rachel. Finally, fully, freely Rachel. The girl who'd documented her own destruction had become the woman who'd demanded her own justice. And won. September in Philadelphia meant new beginnings, but October brought unexpected endings. I was deep in midterms, surrounded by finance textbooks and case studies in the Wharton Library, when my phone buzzed. Harvey's number. I stepped outside to answer. Rachel, I'm sorry to bother you during school, but there's been a development. Your mother has been released from the facility. My stomach clenched. Released to whose care? Tyler's. Apparently, he convinced them he could provide adequate support, but that's not why I'm calling. They filed a motion. What kind of motion? They're contesting the estate settlement, claiming undue influence, that your grandmother manipulated you into pursuing legal action. They want the trust funds frozen pending review. I actually laughed, standing outside the business school where I was building my future with money they'd tried to steal. Let me guess. Mom miraculously recovered once she heard I was in graduate school. The timing is certainly suspicious, but here's the thing. They have a lawyer, not a good one, but someone willing to file papers. The question is, where did they get the money? Tyler? He still had one more semester of college funded by the stolen money. He must have dropped out, taken the refund. That would be my guess. The motion is frivolous, won't go anywhere, but it'll cost money to fight. They're hoping to bleed you with legal fees. Of course they are. I watched students hurrying between classes, backpacks full of futures that didn't include family extortion. What do you recommend? Let me file a motion for sanctions, vexatious litigation, make them pay your legal fees when they lose. It'll end this quickly. Do it. But ending things was never quick with Mom and Tyler. The motion was denied, but they filed another, then another, each one more desperate than the last, claiming I'd forged documents, that Grandma was senile, that Frank had been murdered poisoned somehow to trigger his liver failure. They're grasping at straws, Margaret told me during one of our coffee meetings. She'd been following the case for her article. But desperate people do desperate things. Be careful. I was careful, changed my routes to campus, installed extra locks, kept Grandma's baseball bat within reach, but I couldn't control everything. The call came on a Wednesday night. Not Harvey this time, but Grandma herself, her voice shaky in a way I'd never heard. Honey, I need to tell you something. Don't panic. Panic was immediate. What happened? Someone broke into my house while I was at church. They made a mess, went through everything. I was already grabbing my keys. I'm coming. No, stay in Philadelphia. The police are here. I'm safe. But Rachel, they were looking for something specific. The files are gone. All the documentation I kept about your father, the trust, everything. They think destroying evidence will help their case. Harvey had copies of everything important, but some things, your father's letters, the photos from when you were young, personal things, they're gone. The drive to Mount Fairview took 3 hours. I made it in 2.5. Adrenaline and anger fuel enough to break speed limits. Grandma's house looked violated, drawers emptied, cushions slashed, papers scattered like snow. She sat at her kitchen table, still in her church dress, giving her statement to a detective who looked younger than me. Nothing valuable taken, the detective was saying. Jewelry untouched, electronics still here. This was targeted. We know who did it, I said from the doorway. Tyler Morrison and Diane Morrison. They've been filing false legal claims, and now they're escalating. The detective looked skeptical. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? They're the only ones who'd want those specific documents. The only ones who knew they existed. Knowledge isn't proof, but we'll investigate. He turned back to Grandma. The door was forced. No security system. I've never needed one, Grandma said quietly. 50 years in this house, never needed one. After the police left, we sat in her ransacked living room. I started picking up papers, trying to restore order, but she stopped me. Leave it. I want to remember what desperation looks like, what they were willing to do for money that was never theirs. We should get you a security system, cameras, better locks. No, her voice was firm. I won't live in fear in my own home. That's what they want to make us afraid, to make us small. I've been small enough for one lifetime. Grandma, I have something they don't know about. She stood, walking to her bedroom. I followed and watched as she moved her dresser, revealing a safe built into the wall. Your grandfather installed this in 1973. Watergate made him paranoid about document security. Inside were copies of everything stolen and more. Bank records, photos, letters including one I'd never seen. From my mother to my father, dated a month before he died. Robert, I know what you're planning. The divorce papers you hide in your car aren't as secret as you think, but you should know I'm pregnant. Tyler is yours. Do what you want, but think about your children, both of them. Diane. She trapped him, I whispered. She knew he was leaving and got pregnant to stop him. Or said she was. Tyler came 3 weeks early. Remember, very healthy for a premature baby. Grandma's expression was grim. I always wondered about the timing. You think Frank might be... I think your mother was capable of anything to keep her meal ticket. Whether Tyler is Robert's or Frank's, she used him as a weapon, just like she's using him now. We spent the night cleaning, not because we had to, but because action felt better than anger. By morning, the house looked normal except for the slashed cushions and broken door frame. I called a contractor, arranged repairs, insisted on paying. With my money, I told Grandma when she protested, my recovered money, let them know their theft is fixing what they broke. Harvey filed criminal charges for the break-in and added harassment to our countersuit. But the real blow came from an unexpected source, Janet Morrison, Mom's former coworker, called with information. I probably shouldn't tell you this, she said when we met at a coffee shop near campus. But Diane came to the store last week, begging for her job back. Mr. Fletcher almost felt sorry for her until she mentioned needing money for lawyers to get what was stolen from her. She said that, in front of customers, made a scene. Security had to escort her out. Janet slid a USB drive across the table. Security footage. Mr. Fletcher thought you might need it for your case. Shows her state of mind. I watched the footage that night. Mom, thin and wild-eyed, screaming about injustice and theft, while minimum wage workers tried to calm her. It was pathetic and terrifying, this woman who'd stood by while I was abused, now raging about her own victimhood. Tyler appeared in frame near the end, trying to pull her away. He looked exhausted, older than his 22 years. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered Grandma's slashed cushions and the feeling passed. Margaret published her article the next week. When Family Means Finance, a case study in inheritance abuse, She'd anonymized names, but the story was clear: parents who'd systematically stolen from their child, enabled by a system that prioritized parental rights over fiduciary duty. The article went viral in legal circles. Harvey started getting calls from other attorneys with similar cases. Grandma received letters from other grandparents who'd watched helplessly as their grandchildren were plundered. "You've started something," Margaret told me. "Your case could set precedent." But I didn't want to be a precedent. I wanted to be a student, focusing on derivatives and market analysis instead of depositions and motions. Each court filing took time from studying, energy from building my new life. Then came the email that changed everything, not to my school account or personal one, but to my old work address, forwarded by a former colleague. "Rachel, they say I'm dying, liver, like Frank. Funny how we match even in death. Tyler can't handle it, can't handle me. I don't blame you for hating me. I hate me too. But I need you to know the trust, the money. It was Frank's idea. I went along because I was weak and scared and stupid. But it was never about hurting you. It was about surviving him. There's one account he didn't know about. I hid it like your father hid his $30,000. It's yours. Tyler doesn't know. The details are below. I'm sorry. For all of it. For choosing him. For failing you. For being the mother you deserve to hate. Mom." I stared at the screen, reading and rereading. Another hidden account. Another deathbed revelation. Another attempt to rewrite history with apologies. I forwarded it to Harvey without comment. "It's real," he confirmed the next day. "The account exists, in her name only, opened after Frank's death. The question is what you want to do about it. Is it really mine? Legally, no. She could leave it to anyone. But if this email constitutes a will of sorts, it doesn't matter. I don't want it. Rachel, I don't want her money. I wanted my money. I got most of it back. This is something else. This is her trying to buy forgiveness from beyond the grave. $30,000 is significant money. So was dignity. So was safety. So was love without price tags. I couldn't buy those for any amount." I thought about it. "Can we donate it to a domestic violence shelter?" Harvey smiled. "We can, though Tyler might contest it. Let him fight for scraps while I build something real." The donation was arranged quietly. The Diane Morrison Memorial Fund at the Mount Fairview Women's Shelter, $30,000 for women escaping what Mom never could, or never would. The distinction mattered less than the result. Tyler called when he found out. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, raging about theft and betrayal and family loyalty. I deleted it and blocked the number. Some patterns were meant to be broken. Mom died 2 weeks later. I heard from Janet. Not Tyler. "A quiet service," she said. "Few attendees." Tyler looked lost. She added, "Like a child playing dress-up in his father's suits." "Are you going?" she asked. "No, I said goodbye years ago. This is just paperwork." But that night, I sat with Grandma and we looked through the photos the thieves had missed, ones from before Frank, before the theft, before the breaking, pictures of a young mother with her daughter, both smiling, both unaware of what was coming. "She loved you once," Grandma said, "before she learned to love herself less." "I know. That's what makes it worse. She chose to stop." "Yes, she did. And you chose to survive it. That's the difference between you when life got hard. You got stronger. She just got smaller until she disappeared entirely." I flew back to Philadelphia the next morning. Midterms waited. Study groups and internship applications, and the future I was building dollar by recovered dollar. Tyler would bury our mother alone. Rage alone. Face his choices alone. The golden child left with fool's gold, and the knowledge that favor without foundation crumbles. My phone buzzed as I settled into my library carrel. Harvey again. The last motion was dismissed with prejudice. Tyler can't file anything else related to the trust. It's over. Really over this time. Over. I tested the word. Felt its weight. Frank in the ground. Mom joining him. Tyler cut off from both my money and my life. The spreadsheets closed. The evidence filed. The case won. "Thank you," I told Harvey. "For everything. Send me your final bill." "Already paid," he said. "Your grandmother insisted. Said it was an investment in justice. And in you?" Of course she had. Grandma, who'd waited 15 years with file folders and faith, who'd stood up when standing up mattered, who'd shown me that family was choice, not chance, and love was action, not words. I hung up and opened my finance textbook. Chapter 12. Risk Management and Portfolio Theory. I almost laughed at the irony. I'd been managing risk since I was 18, building a portfolio of evidence against the people who should have been my security. But that was over now. Really over. Time to build something new. Something mine. Something that no one could steal or slash or contest. I bent over my books and began. Christmas Eve in Philadelphia. Snow fell soft and silent outside my window as I wrapped the last present, a leather-bound journal for Grandma, embossed with her initials. The apartment smelled like apple pie. My first successful attempt using her recipe and the dish she'd insisted I keep. 2 years had passed since that Thanksgiving when everything changed. 2 years of court battles turned to quiet victories. 2 years of building the life they'd tried to steal. My MBA was 6 months from completion. The internship at Goldman Sachs had turned into a full-time offer, starting salary more than I'd ever dreamed. But numbers on paper meant less than the peace of each morning. Waking without fear. Checking bank accounts that no one else could touch. The doorbell rang. Grandma stood in the hallway, snow in her silver hair, carrying a poinsettia and her overnight bag. "Merry Christmas Eve, honey. You're early. I was going to pick you up at the station." Caught an earlier train. Couldn't wait. She handed me the plant, then pulled me into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and home real home, the kind built on trust instead of terror. We spent the evening cooking together, her teaching me the timing for perfect roast chicken, the secret to gravy without lumps. She moved slower now, 75 years showing in careful steps, but her mind remained sharp as the knife she wielded with practiced precision. "I have news," she said over dinner, "about Tyler." I set down my fork. We hadn't spoken his name in months. "What kind of news?" "He reached out through Janet, wants to apologize, says he's been in therapy, working through everything, has a job now, an apartment. He's trying to build something honest." "Good for him." "He asked if you'd be willing to meet, just coffee, no lawyers, no arguments, just conversation." I thought about Tyler at 24, finally working, finally independent, finally free of our mother's poison. Maybe someday, not yet, maybe not ever, but I hope he finds peace. "That's fair, more than fair," she smiled. "You've grown so much, Rachel, not just successful-wise." After dinner, we sat by my small Christmas tree, sharing the quiet, no television, no phone calls, no demands, just us, the snow, and the kind of silence that felt like safety. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," Grandma said suddenly. "Not for them, for us. How holding on to anger is like gripping a hot coal, it only burns the one holding it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. They're strangers who happen to share some DNA. The opposite of family, really. And what is family?" I thought about it, watching snow swirl past the window. Family is showing up with file folders when someone's ready to fight back. Family is teaching someone to make pie in a new city. Family is believing someone the first time they show you bruises. Family is choosing each other, Grandma agreed. Every day, especially the hard days. My phone buzzed. An email from Harvey. I almost ignored it. Christmas Eve meant no legal business, but the subject line caught my eye. Final estate matter, good news. I read it aloud. The IRS had finished its investigation. Additional funds recovered from Frank's fraud would be distributed to victims, including me. Another $40,000, arriving after the new year. "It never ends," I said, half laughing. "Every time I think we're done, more money appears, like they hid it everywhere and forgot where. Or never thought they'd be held accountable. But you know what this means." "What?" You can pay off your student loans entirely. Start your career free and clear. No debts to anyone, for anything. Free and clear. The word sat between us like a gift. At 31, I'd have an MBA, a six-figure job, and zero debt. The life my father had wanted for me, built from the ashes of what they'd burned. "There's something else," Grandma said, reaching into her purse. "I've been waiting for the right moment." She handed me an envelope, old and yellowed. Inside, a photograph I'd never seen Dad and me at maybe age 5, building a sandcastle. On the back, in his handwriting, Rachel's first beach trip. She insisted on making it perfect, knocked it down 3 times before she was satisfied. My little architect of happiness. "Where did you find this?" "Safety deposit box I'd forgotten about. There are more, a whole box of memories they couldn't steal. But this reminded me who you've always been. Someone who won't settle for less than what you deserve." I traced my father's writing, this evidence of love that predated everything broken. "Thank you." "Thank Harvey. He reminded me about the box during one of our strategy sessions." She smiled. "Said you deserve to have good memories along with the vindication." We talked until midnight, then said goodnight, but I couldn't sleep. Mind full of sandcastles and spreadsheets, bruises and breakthroughs. I got up and opened my laptop, not for work but to write. "Dear Tyler." I typed and deleted a dozen versions before settling on simple truth. "Grandma told me you want to meet. I'm not ready. May never be. But I want you to know I hope you're building something good. Something honest. Something yours. It's harder than stealing but worth more than money. Take care of yourself." I sent it before I could reconsider, then went back to bed. In the morning, there'd be presents and pie and Grandma's laugh filling my small apartment. In 6 months, graduation. In 7, a career built on merit instead of manipulation. But tonight, there was just snow and silence and the strange peace of surviving your own story. Christmas morning came bright and clear. Grandma was already up, making coffee in the percolator she'd brought from home. "Merry Christmas, honey." "Merry Christmas, Grandma." We exchanged gifts, the journal for her, a cashmere scarf for me. Small things, chosen with care instead of obligation. She ran her fingers over the embossed letters on the journal's cover. "For new memories," she said. "The kind worth keeping." "No more documentation needed," I agreed. "Just life." She opened the journal to the first page and wrote something, then showed me December 25th, "Safe and loved and free, the best gift of all." Tyler responded to my email that afternoon. Short, simple. "I understand. Thank you for not hating me. Merry Christmas." I showed Grandma. She nodded. Maybe that's enough. Maybe knowing you don't hate him is all he needs to move forward. I don't hate any of them, I realized. I nothing them. They're just done, filed away, case closed. "The best revenge," Grandma said, "is needing no revenge at all." We spent the day cooking, watching old movies, being the family we'd chosen to become. No drama, no demands, no price tags attached to presents, just us, building new traditions on foundations strong enough to last. That evening, as Grandma dozed in the recliner, I stood at the window watching Philadelphia light up for the holiday. Somewhere out there were other Rachels, documenting bruises, counting stolen money, believing love required payment in pain. I couldn't save them all, but my story. Our story was out there now, proof that evidence could become justice, that survival could become success, that family could be chosen instead of endured. My phone buzzed, a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Read your story in the legal journal. Starting my own documentation tonight. Thank you for showing it's possible to win." I smiled and put the phone away. Another Rachel, building her paper trail. Another grandmother. Perhaps, waiting with patience and files. Another ending that could become beginning. Grandma stirred, opening her eyes. "What are you smiling about?" "The future," I said. "All of it, every free and clear moment." "Good," she said, settling back. "It's about time." Outside, snow began falling again. Inside, we were warm and safe and chosen. The bruises had faded, the accounts were recovered, the case was closed. But the life, the real life, the free life, the life built on love instead of fear was just beginning. And it was perfect. Not sandcastle perfect, knocked down until it met impossible standards, but real perfect, earned perfect, ours perfect. The girl who'd documented her own destruction had become the woman who'd authored her own happy ending, with interest. Finally, blessedly, completely free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and exchange thoughts about Rachel's journey. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. And if you want to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it, please click the hype button. Your support means the world and helps these stories find those who need them most.